Right, so instead of, in terms of the key joints and their actions and restrictions, I feel in this posture, the main restriction is the balance in terms of abducting the legs. So the first thing we think about the legs, we abduct the legs at the hip. And for any of your students who may have issues with balance, I think that's going to be the main concern. So obviously bringing the legs in so that the student feels comfortable, using perhaps anchoring the back foot against a wall. The foot position, so the back foot, the rear foot is flexed, the ankle, the front foot is extended at the ankle. But any restrictions with the ankles can be allayed by, I think, adjusting the foot position. It's important to sort of not to be a purist about this if people have got issues with their ankles, so that they can move, perhaps actually to have the feet slightly turned out in sort of second position to alleviate some of that possible tension. Now the rear leg is extended. That again, any restrictions can be helped by bringing the legs together slightly. And I did say that I've actually written in my notes that the back leg is immediately rotated at the hip, but the way I teach this, or the way I have just taught it in the previous video, is that the hips are facing the front, and the back leg is in fact externally rotated. And I think if you immediately rotate the back leg, it gives you a twist, whereas I teach this as a lateral flexion. So again, any restrictions with the hips, it's just a question of adjusting the foot position to see whether any kind of rotation of the hip causes some discomfort. The front leg is flexed as we bend over that front leg. Sometimes blood pressure can be a concern or a restriction. Again, making use of a wall, so that perhaps you, instead of bending all the way down as far as the block, your student can anchor themselves with their hand against a wall, the top of a chair, so that they're just going horizontally rather than all the way down. Now the arms are externally rotated and also abducted. So this could be there could be some restrictions in the shoulder. Obviously, I talked about the upper arm being lowered to help the openness through the chest. That will also help any shoulder problems. And the lower arm, essentially, we're going, although it's abducted, we're moving with gravity, so you may find that there's less restriction there. But obviously, if there were to be, you could always bend the elbow, and perhaps they can rest the arm on your thigh, on their thigh, perhaps with a blanket or something, or a block, just to lessen that movement there, lessen that position. The trunk is laterally flexed at the spine. There might be back issues, in which case, and there might be some stiffness and some tightness in the lower back around the trunk, in which case, obviously, just moving at their measure. The spine is rotated along its axis, same thing as before. And then the skull, I talked about the skull earlier, so not having the gaze up towards the fingertips, but having the gaze down or out, or even down towards the floor if there are any neck issues. Key muscles, so we know that the front leg, the hamstrings and the quadriceps and the glutes are strengthening. There may be an issue with weak leg muscles, or restrictions with weak leg muscles. So that's just a case of working at an earlier stage, perhaps having the legs a little bit closer together, using the blocks. The back leg is it's for stabilizing, and again that I think along the outside of the glute, at the outside of the thigh, you can feel it quite strongly there. So again, any restrictions, bringing the legs a little bit closer in. The upper body, I think everything I covered in terms of the joints to do with the upper body will also apply to the fact that some of there might be weaknesses in any of the muscles, the deltoids, the triceps, the external and internal obliques. Lengthening, obviously both the back hip joint is lengthening and the front hip joint lengthening. There's that lengthening through here. That can be challenging if it's just not a position I think that people are used to moving in, because I think that lateral flexion is one of the reasons we do it in yoga, and one of the reasons why it's so important to do every day in our yoga practice is that we do a lot of the forward bending and a little bit of, well, not so much back bending, but we might even twist, but actually lateral flexion is perhaps something that people can get quite stiff in and quite restricted in. And I would encourage the students to start moving a little bit in that direction, even if they feel stiff at first. Okay, thank you.